All right. In this video, I want to talk about banned books. I recently saw a meme of a mother putting her child to bed. She says, it's bedtime. Don't let me catch you reading. And then she leaves, and what does the child do? Opens up a book and starts to read. And he's like, like, I'm going to do it anyway. But the mom is like, that's what I wanted you to do. And I was like, brilliant. Because she understands that we have a rebellious nature. And a lot of Christians don't seem to realize that. So when we have these atheistic, agnostic, unbelievers upset because Christians want to ban books from the schools, you should not be focusing on the books that they want to be brought into the schools. Because what are the rebellious kids going to do? They're going to say, hey, everybody doesn't want me reading this. I'm going to go read it. So you're actually supporting the problem, right? What you need to do is focus on, oh, yeah, well, they have banned the Bible from the school libraries for a long time. Tell them that. Be like, hey, why don't they want you reading that? You use it to promote the Bible, to get the children thinking, hey, yeah, why do they have it banned? And their rebellious nature is like, you know what, I'm going to go read it anyway. Just because that's how children are. You tell them not to do it, hey, they want to do it. You tell them to do it, they don't want to do it. Right? So if they think, hey, oh, I'm going against the system, I'm going against the man, right? I'm going against the hierarchy. I'm gonna do what they tell me not to do. Well, let them know that, hey, well, the system had the Bible banned for a long time. They don't want you reading it. Isn't that something strange? And you notice that they didn't make a big deal about it as they are right now with the banning of sexual content to children. And that's because they want the children to see that the people want that it banned because they know our nature. The devil knows our nature. And he's using that against us so that when we're going, hey, we want all this banned, what are the children reading? I'm hearing. They're like, they don't want me to check this out. Now I want to check it out. So now all this stuff about this sexuality and even basically pornography in some of these books that they're trying to give to children, some of them are not even teenagers, younger than 10 years old, that they are giving them these books that have these images in there and ideas in there. They're going to go after them, wondering why their parents don't want them to check them out. So think about that, right? Because when these people are talking about all these banned books in the schools, I'm like, yeah, so you don't care that the Bible was banned? And they're like, well, I want all the Bibles in there, and I want all the religious books in there. You're like, okay, well then do that. Preach for that. Complain for that. Because if you start complaining that you want the Bible in there, well, then you're showing that you're not a hypocrite. And then the Christians that speak out against you, you're making them look like hypocrites because they don't want your books, but they want their book in there, right? So show that you want all the books then. Really show it. Be like, not just the ones that you want. Hey, all the religious ones too. Namely the Bible, right? Because then you show that you're actually inclusive, you're tolerant. But they're not going to do that, right? In a conversation personally with you, they might say that, yeah, I support all the religious books being in there, support the Bible being in there, all the versions of the Bible in there. But then when it actually comes down to it, really getting something done about that, they're not going to bring that up. It's going to be about their books, the books that they want in there, that they want your children reading. And ultimately, this comes down to being part of the system in the first place, because we have all brought this upon ourselves. We let the state educate our children instead of homeschooling them. And they slowly brought us into this, getting us away from the farms, into the cities, and then taking the father and putting him to work in the factories and wherever else, the mines and all this stuff, so that he's not having a close relationship with his family and his children. His influence isn't as strong. So now you can undermine him into the family, getting through to his wife with different ideas, and then getting her to then do the same thing, go out into the workforce. And now, who's there to have the children to make sure that they're getting a solid foundation? Oh, that the state. Oh, now the state's we have different rules and regulations where we can't. We know you want them to be Christian, but we can't do that. It's against the law now. It's against religious freedom, right? So they take that influence and that foundation away from your children, and then they start bringing in things opposed to it. Like we've seen statues of Baphomet they brought in with two children on either side of them, bringing in all this stuff about two dads or two moms, and uh, maybe you're not really a boy, maybe you're not really a girl, and then showing weird homosexual acts illustrated in some of these books, where there's even been parents who brought them up with these school councils and state councils and showed them, and they're like, hey, that's too graphic, you can't be bringing that in here. And he's like, hey, what are you talking about? This is a child's book. You're saying a children's book is too graphic to be brought up here? That's what? That's how could that be? We can show this to the children, but we can't show it here? That's that's messed up. That's clown world right there. But yeah, it, it's being part of the system in the first place. It's why I preach to have your children homeschooled. Cut down on things. You'll be like, oh, you can't afford that. Well, you might be able to if you find a place that is maybe run down, but hey, it's cheaper. You don't have to have certain things like the internet, for example. And you actually keep your children from getting into a lot of messed up ideas and stuff through the internet in the first place. You don't have to get the whole family phones either, right? You see, they got you used to having all these things as if you think they're needed. So you can save a lot of money cutting down on these things, and then you don't have all the money that you're using for all these streaming services and all that. You could be saving money in a lot of different ways. You probably don't even realize. Probably cutting down on eating out and uh, changing what you do eat. Maybe you don't eat so much. That cuts down some things there. Make sure you're drinking more water and stop spending money on beer and sodas and energy drinks and Starbucks coffees. I'm pretty sure there's a lot of ways you can save a lot more money. You can live within your means, right? And once you do that, you find it a lot easier to end up homeschooling your children, because then you could live off of one person's salary, right? I know you don't want to hear that, and that's not fun, but that's how it is, right? You care about your children, you want them to have a solid foundation, you want them to know Christianity, to know the word, to know what's going on in the world. Well, then why are you letting the world raise them? That just sounds really stupid. It's like you're sacrificing your children to the beast. But I know a lot of people aren't going to like hearing this, so probably not going to get too many thumbs up on this. Maybe lose subscribers on that. because I know a lot of you have children and you making up excuses why they have to go to the schools and all this. And well, you really care about their souls, you'd figure something out. Start by praying, asking God how to work all this out. And start living by faith instead of by sight. Right? I know it's not fun, it's not easy, not what you want to hear, but that's the truth there. So I have it where I don't like, I would love to have a family and have like 100 children. I think that would be awesome. But I know how I am and I know how children are, and they all have their own personalities and their free will. So you might have created 100 lost souls that go to hell by having all those children in this world. So my mindset is, all right, how about you worry more about reaching people with the gospel so that they become born again and they become part of your eternal family, not your temporal family here, where there's no guarantee that they're going to actually believe in Christianity and follow your example, right? You're basically flipping a coin there because you can be the best example ever and you could be praying to God that they stay strong and they learn the truth and they stick to the straight and narrow, but they have their own free will and they might choose to do something otherwise. Just like God, perfect example for Lucifer. What happened with him? Jesus, perfect example for Judas. What happened with him? Right? I'm not saying don't have children. Do what you're going to do. This is just my philosophy and how I see things. And I think it's a good way for us all to live, especially if we truly believe in the Bible, we truly believe God, we truly believe the gospel. Then we know that, hey, when I believed the gospel, I became born again. But my family and friends, they didn't join me. In the flesh, yes, they are my family and friends. But come judgment, if they don't end up accepting the gospel and being born again, well, they're not going to be part of my family and friends anymore. And that's a sad realization there. But you need to realize that can be the same case with your own children that you have in this world. So if you want true family, true friends, preach the gospel, right? Because then they're guaranteed eternal life through Jesus Christ. And we'll all be good, right? You don't have to worry about losing them or anything. They don't have to worry about losing you either. It's great. But anyway, I guess the last thing I would say is about the system. Because while I was talking to some of these people about banned books and what have you, I was talking about, homeschooling. Because you got to know the law and know that you're under common law, not the law of the government or the state that you happen to be living on. So when you know this and you actually learn it, you can be free from the system where you realize their laws have no jurisdiction on you. So just because you're doing something that would be considered illegal doesn't mean it's unlawful. And that means that, hey, this is lawful, I can do it, even though it's illegal. Such as, I don't have to have my children go to school, and I don't have to meet the homeschool requirements that they say that you have to have, because they have no jurisdiction over me and my family. Their laws don't apply to me, just like American laws don't apply to the Canadians or the Mexicans, right? Just like the Chinese laws don't apply to Russia or America, right? Because they have no jurisdiction. And when you realize this, you realize that you've been free this whole time, but since you let the state raise the children don't know the law, and they think that they are subject to the state. And since the majority believe that, everybody who wants to leave the plantation, they look at as some kind of freeloading terrorist or something, right? But that's just something else you got to live with, right? Friendship with the world is enmity with God, and we're to be a peculiar people in the world, but not of it. And this is one of those ways to do it. And I know you're not going to like it. I can just feel it. I can feel people's awkwardness hearing this because they're like, yeah, but I have a wife and children, or I have a husband and children, and I mean, we're living paycheck to paycheck, and how could we not have them go to the public schools? How I just don't. And I know. I'm I'm not condemning you for not knowing these things, but now that you know these things, start praying. Start praying to God of like, how can you fix these things? How can you get out of this? Right? But first, you have to admit there's a problem, and that you need to take care of it in the first place. Ignoring it or trying to justify why you did what you did and why you're going to keep doing it, well, then nothing's going to be changed. Nothing's going to be fixed, right? But yeah, I guess to end this, I want to recap what I was saying in the beginning. You got to realize your children have a rebellious nature. You got to use wisdom to realize how to use this against them. I don't want to necessarily say against them, but use it for their own benefit. Because if you know they're going to rebel against you, do what the mother did in that meme. You're like, don't let me catch you reading. Because then their rebellious nature is going to be like, you know what, I'm going to read. And be more specific. Don't let me catch you reading the Bible. But also use wisdom, because there's times where you can set the influence. Read the Bible in front of them. Read the Bible to them. And they might follow that example. But then, there's some children that are more rebellious than others. And just use that against them. Hey, don't let me catch you reading it. I don't want you reading it. Right? And sometimes that kind of thing actually works. As we can see, that's what is being done here by the state right now. Oh, look! They're trying to censor and ban these books. Why? Why? So now the children being curious. Now they're drawn to these books where before the children might not even been paying attention. But since all of a sudden you're drawing attention to it, now they're like, hey, I want to know why they're banning these books, why they're censoring them. Because this was the same thing growing up when we learned about DARE in school, DARE to keep kids off drugs, drug awareness, something, whatever. Where when I was a kid, I didn't know anything about the drugs, like marijuana and all that stuff and what have you, because I was just, for the comparative, innocent. Not that I didn't do some stupid things as a child, but in that uh, situation, in that circumstances there, that can't think of the proper word to use there. But concerning more adult things, I was oblivious, like a lot of children are. But then the school, what does the school do? It starts teaching you about the drugs and how people take the drugs. So they're not trying to protect the children from drugs. They're teaching us what the drugs are and how to use them. Where before it was like, I didn't even know these things existed. And now what? There's people who sell these things to us, and this is how you do it, and But under the guise of trying to actually protect you from drugs, they teach you of it. Because I remember my dad one time asking me about, or talking about something to do with smoking, and I told him, I think we saw it written, the word, and I was like, oh, marijuana. And he's like, how'd you know how to say that? And I was like scared that my dad was going to whoop my ass. Because he was like, how do you even know what that is? And it was like, oh, well, the school, the DARE program, they teach us that stuff. And he's like, oh, okay. So that saved me from getting a whooping there. But yeah, if they didn't even tell me how to say that word, I would have been like marijuana, I would, if you wouldn't know how to say that, right? But just shows how your school systems that you use to raise your children are bringing us into that world, right? So why would you give your children over to the devil, to the enemy, to raise them? And I know the mindset is usually, well, that's how I was raised and I turned out fine. Are you really fine though? And that's the thing. Compare yourself to your parents and your grandparents and see, hey, we're very vastly different. And hey, I don't really agree with what they're doing with my children, just like my parents weren't so okay with what they were doing, and my grandparents aren't okay with how the schools were teaching me. I think this is getting worse generation by generation. Maybe you should wake up and do something about it and stop the whole train before we go off the rails here, right? But I don't know. I don't know. I kind of getting to that point where I see a lot of things coming, and I tell people, "Hey, it's coming. This is coming. That's coming." You can see it. Each generation gets worse. You can see where this is leading. History repeating itself, and it's being done with our country here, and people are just like, "Whatever." I'm like, "Oh, well, at least I did my job. I warned you." But I used to get worked up about it, like really try to get them to respond and do something. And now I'm just like, "Well, I told you. I did my part. Now I'm just gonna watch you do it," which is what I plan on doing. Telling people, warning them, and I know they're gonna do it anyway. So, oh, I did my part. Hey, don't do that. Yeah, okay. Well, he's gonna do it anyway. Okay, let's see how this works out. Maybe it works out. Maybe somehow it, he gets out of this somehow. Okay, nope. Oh, well, I told you. And what's weird is that then people get mad at you when you warn them, and then it happens. They get mad at you. You ever notice things like that? And it's like, why? I tried to prevent that from happening, and then you did it anyway, and now I'm the enemy? It's like the way people's minds are just warped because of our own sinful nature. It's illogical, it's unreasonable, it makes no sense. And that's why we need to be born again. So I'll just end the video with that. Thanks for watching, and take care. Alright, here's the 3 verses that I like to put in all the videos here. Isaiah 34:16, seek ye out the book of the Lord and read, so that Jesus doesn't tell you what he tells the Sadducees here in Matthew 22:29, ye do err, not knowing the scriptures. It's not that you err in error because you don't know the one true church that happens to be your denomination, or that you don't know the fundamental beliefs, or the Nicene Creed, the Apostles' Creed, or whatever creed, or that you don't know the magisterium or the clergy, or you don't know your favorite pastor or priest. That's why you're in error. No, you're in error because you don't know the scriptures. You need the scriptures to test to see whether or not those are correct, whether those are the right traditions, whether those are legitimate clergy, whether that church is actually following God, and whether those creeds line up. Those fundamental beliefs are found in the scriptures. Because knowing the scriptures is knowing God. Like we read here in John 17:3, Jesus says, "And this is life eternal, that they might know thee, the only true God, and Jesus Christ, whom thou hast sent." This is a deep knowing. As Adam knew Eve and she conceived, you need to know God in like manner, so that you may be born again, that his word, his seed, it abides in your heart, where you truly believe that Jesus Christ is God in the flesh, that he died in your place and gives you his life in exchange, so that your righteousness, your good and your bad, your life, past, present, and future, died 2,000 years ago. Your life is his. He can do what he wants with it. He puts it to death, and he gives you his life in exchange, his perfect, eternal life. That's the deep knowing you need to know of God. So, there you go. Do you know him? Do you want to know him? Get to know him. Thanks again for watching. Take care.
So that fella couldn't join the church. He couldn't join the church. He couldn't get baptized. He couldn't get baptized. He woke up with God. He woke up with the devil. Are you saved? Amen. So that fella didn't take the sacraments. Didn't take the sacraments. Didn't say the rosary. Didn't take the rosary. Didn't tithe. Didn't tithe. He went to heaven. He went to hell. You saved? Didn't keep the law. He didn't keep the law. He broke the commandments. He broke the commandments. He didn't keep the golden rule. He didn't keep the golden rule. He woke up in glory. He woke up in the pit. Are you saved? You're saved. If you're not saved, you're over here or you're over here. You sure ain't in the middle. He said, Lord, remember me, thou comest thy kingdom. And Jesus turned to him and said, verily I say unto thee, today shalt thou be saved. Just like that. You have been saved? If you ever saved, you were saved like that.